Quote Love, Unquote by New Amsterdam. Chapter 10. As the song ends, Kirishima lifts his hands from his guitar strings. His fingers throb, old calluses worn down over the past few days smarting. Next to him, Ashido pushes back from the mic and brushes her sweaty hair off her forehead. Eijirou keeps one hand pressed against the sleek black body of a guitar, eyes closed as though she's memorizing the sound of the last few notes as they reverberate through the air. Kaminari sits back, his skull pressed against the wall as he stretches out his spine. In the aftermath of the music, all of them are focused on themselves and the sound. It's as though nothing else exists. It's been 2 days of straight recording, and Riot's worked itself to the bone in the process. Outside the recording booth, lyric sheets and pages of music litter the coffee table and couches where they've been taking most of their breaks. In the past 5 hours, they've laid out 3 tracks. If the studio has its way, the album will be done by the end of the week. For Kirishima, who builds up songs like running streams slowly gathering force, it's a distinct change of pace. Like someone has thrown open the floodgates, and now he's careening down a rushing river. It's exhilarating as much as it's exhausting and terrifying. He understands the need for the rush. Ever since Kirishima started dating Bakugou, more and more attention has come Riot's way. And when reporters and bloggers and tabloids call their label and ask for information on the band, there needs to be something to promote. Not just a couple songs available as MP3 downloads. Not concert tickets only available to those in the city. No. What the studio needs is an album they can sell. A clear statement of who Riot is and why the world should take notice. They've recorded 9 songs, written over the space of a couple years that Riot has been together. The narrative of the album doesn't quite flow yet. There's something missing, and Kirishima winces as he thinks of listening to the entire thing. Before he releases it to the world, he needs to make sure it says what he wants it to. "That was great," the sound engineer says over the intercom. "Take 5, or 10. We'll start on the next track after lunch." Kaminari and Eijirou immediately get up and exit the recording booth, but Ashido lingers as Kirishima sets down his guitar. "What's up?" he asks. Ashido laces her fingers together in front of her, bites down on the inside of her cheek before she replies. "I saw you were working on something new, and I was wondering..." It's rare for her to be so hesitant, but now her dark eyes flicker from side to side. When she'd asked Kirishima to write a song specifically for her, she'd revealed something of herself that Kirishima had never thought to look for. She'd entrusted him with something, and now he needs to prove worthy of that trust. "It's something," he tells her, frowning slightly. "I mean, it's not done yet, but we could go over it now if you want." Ashido throws her arms around his neck, holding him close for a moment. "You're the best, Kirishima. You know that, right?" He smiles wanly. "Sure." Ashido pushes him away with a huff, rolling her eyes. "You don't know it, which seems impossible, but that's also sort of why you're the best." He tilts his head, trying to parse what she means, but eventually he gives up and goes to retrieve the sheet music that he and Eijirou have been working on. "I'm warning you, it's rough," he says, hoisting an acoustic guitar from its stand in one corner of the booth. Ashido waves off his words. "It's fine, just play it for me." Kirishima takes a deep breath, then strums out a few chords to ready himself. The song only has the barest hints of a melody, the notes deceptively delicate. He plays through the main line one time, then another. Then he starts to sing. Ashido keeps her eyes trained on him the whole time. They do this often enough. Kirishima will sing a song like he's imagined it in his head, then Ashido will give her own rendition. She often adds things he hadn't thought of, runs and musical quirks that add character to the song, or shift its tone. Together, their 2 visions of what the song should be come together in a whole. This time, when he finishes, Ashido just stares on at him in silence. "What?" he says, shifting. "You don't like it?" Ashido shakes her head. "No," she says. "It's beautiful. It's almost more than I wanted to say." Discomfort gnaws at Kirishima's stomach. He'd taken what Ashido had told him for the song, but he'd embellished. He'd brought his own feelings too. And now the song tells two stories. Or maybe the same story from two angles. He's not quite sure yet. Ashido pulls up a stool and sits beside Kirishima, grabbing the sheet music out of his hand. She glances over the lyrics, a frown creasing her brow. "Sing it with me this time." They start off in a round. Kirishima sings a line first, and then Ashido echoes him. She makes some changes, he pushes back on others. Before he knows it, they've gone through the entire song 6 or 7 times. Kaminari and Jiro are back in the studio, sitting at the sound engineer's station instead of coming back into the booth. "We can hear better from here," Jiro explains, "with a little distance." "Start again," Kaminari instructs. "From the top, together." Kirishima begins the song on his guitar, shutting his eyes as he starts to sing. This time, Ashido joins him at once, so that they're traveling through the song at the same pace. He wonders if Ashido is thinking of Sero as he sings. He knows whose memory he's pulling on. He imagines Bakugou, radiating an energy that pulls people in at the same time it pushes people away. He imagines what it would be like to be at the center of a force like that. What you would think of yourself if people treated you with equal doses of admiration and frustration. How would you approach the world? The feeling comes through in his words, as he pitches lower and his voice takes on a gravelly tone. Ashido's voice, sharp and clear, layers over his almost perfectly. Her words are laden with just as much emotion as his, and for a moment it's like they're both wading deeper and deeper into a river, held down by more water the further they go, as it comes up over their heads and sweeps them away. When they finish, and Kirishima's hands still on the guitar, the world around them is silent, except for the last reverberations of music. Slowly, Kirishima opens his eyes. From the other side of the glass panels, someone is staring at him with a satisfied smile playing at her lips. Kirishima nearly drops his guitar in surprise. The weight of it leaves his hands, and it's only the cloth strap around Kirishima's shoulder that keeps it crashing to the floor. "Kamaya-san, when did you get here?" Kayama Nemori lifts her hands and offers Kirishima and Ashido a round of applause. She's a tall woman with a jagged mane of black hair, lips painted blood red, and bright eyes hidden behind red-rimmed glasses. She wears perfectly tailored white cigarette pants and a matching blazer over a black corset. As she claps her hands, the silver bracelets at her wrists jingle. "Well done, Kirishima-kun, Ashido-san," she says. Her voice is rich and melodic, even though her talents lie behind the scenes of a microphone. "That's definitely the version we want on the album." Kirishima squeaks in surprise. "You were recording?" Pressing down on the intercom, Kaminari offers him a thumbs up through the glass. "I thought you'd want to hear it played back. I didn't know Kayama-san would be walking by." Kayama's lips pull into a sly grin. "This is my record label, isn't it? I'm allowed to walk in my own halls." "Of course," Kirishima says, as Ashido gets up to grab a drink of water. "But, Kayama-san, that wasn't the real version. I'm not singing on the album." Kayama pushes up her glasses as she looks down her nose at him. "I know a hit when I hear one, Kirishima-kun. Sometimes you get a song right the first time, and when that's so, you don't mess with it. But," she lets out a sigh, brushing back at her dark hair, "aren't you the one who declared yourself to me with so much boyish enthusiasm and dedication? Where is that Kirishima-kun gone?" His cheeks burn crimson at the memory. 6 months ago when Riot had been playing at a small club. It had been in the beginning, right when he felt he needed to do something to push himself forward. When his shame had faded enough to let him breathe again, he'd been determined to change the trajectory of his life. He'd heard that an executive from Midnight Records was at the venue, and charged in with reckless ambition. Riot. Kayama had asked him, nursing a glass of wine as she sat to one side of the stage. That's an interesting name. It's from an old Crimson Chevalier song, actually, Kirishima had said, sheepishly scratching at the back of his neck. He'd been preparing to face a suited wooden executive, not the full might of Kayama Nemori herself. It takes some confidence to pick up the mantle of another artist, Nemori had told him. Are you up for that? Kirishima had shut his eyes, steeling himself for a moment. Yes, he'd said, a moment later, with utter certainty. He knew how good his band was, even then. Riot was something special. We're gonna be worthy of it. Kayama had grinned at him, and clasped her hands together. A few days later, they were signed with one of the biggest labels in the country, and rehearsing to be the opening act for Present Mic, one of Midnight Records' most famous acts. Anyway, Kayama says now, with an air of finality, I'm producing this record, and this is the version of that song I want, so that's the version we'll have. She leaves no room for argument, though her smile is gentle as she glances around at the four of them. You've done good work, all of you. Stop by my office before you leave for the day. We need to talk about where Riot is headed next. She blows them a theatrical kiss before she leaves the room. Just being around her makes me dizzy, Kaminari says, watching her leave. Why'd you do that? Kirishima asks, leaving the booth to join Kaminari in the outer room. Ashido follows behind him. Kaminari shrugs. Because the song sounds good that way. I told you, I didn't know she was outside. It doesn't matter what it sounds like, Kirishima says, voice sharper than he intends. Doesn't it? Judo puts in. Isn't the whole point for the album to sound as good as possible? But, Ashido, tell them! Kirishima throws his hands up. But Ashido is standing to one side with her arms folded, looking at Kirishima severely. How'd it feel? What? Singing with me, Ashido explains. How'd you feel just now? Kirishima takes in a steadying breath, thinking back just a few moments. It had felt different. Singing in time with Ashido, acknowledging what they could be together, singing his feelings with his own voice. He hesitates before he answers. It didn't feel wrong. Ashido smirks. Kirishima's face heats, and he runs a nervous hand over his spiked hair. It's not... I like singing, you guys know that. That was never the problem. Kaminari spreads his hands, pushing himself back into his chair and propping his feet up against the wall. Stop doing that, Kirishima says, fighting back a laugh. You know I know what you're doing, right? Jiro reaches over and pats Kirishima lightly on one cheek. You guys are impossible, Kirishima groans. Do you want to listen to your song, dude? Kaminari asks, eyes wide and innocent. Kirishima doesn't fight his grin this time. Yeah, he says. I really do. Kirishima stands in the hallway, flushed and excited as he taps on his phone. He had it turned off while they recorded, so now he waits for any new messages that might have arrived in the last few hours. But a blank screen greets him. Frowning slightly, but not to be deterred, he taps out a quick message. Kirishima, 2:15. You won't believe this. We're recording a song, and I actually sang on it. And I think it's really good. Like, really good. I want you to hear it. He waits for some acknowledgement of the message, but nothing comes. Frown deepening, he scrolls back up to read a string of unanswered messages. Kirishima, 3 days ago. Did you make it home alright? Kirishima, 2 days ago. Studio called us in for a recording this week. I'm gonna be pretty busy, but we could go get lunch or something if you're around. Kirishima, 2 days ago. Dude, did you lose your phone or something? Kirishima, yesterday. Another day of recording. What are you doing this week? Kirishima, 8:10. Bakugou. No answer has come. Not since the last time Kirishima saw Bakugou at Riot's last concert. It's not that Kirishima expects constant communication. Bakugou has made it very clear how self-sufficient he is, how little he needs Kirishima or anyone else. But before that, he'd at least acknowledged the messages. Kirishima knew he'd been reading them. This sudden silence, after the strangeness of their last encounter, leaves Kirishima worried. Biting down on his lip, he composes a new message, this time to Sero. Kirishima, 2:25. Hey, where is he? Instead of a text, Sero's response is to call Kirishima a moment later. His heart skips a beat as he answers. Hello? Hey, Kirishima. Sero says, his voice light but not nearly as warm as it usually is. No word from Bakugou? No, Kirishima says, cautiously. He wishes he knew how to bridge the distance between him and Sero without feeling like he's betraying Ashido. He wants to go back to the days when all of them were friends, and nothing was quite this complicated. Sero lets out a little huff on the other end of the line. Sounds about right, he mutters. He's probably just being a baby. He came down with a bad cold on Monday. We had to cancel a bunch of interviews and readings this week while he recovers. I told him to tell you so you'd know if anyone asked. He's sick? Kirishima tries to imagine it. Bakugou had been flushed that night in the rain, but... Kirishima sighs. You really thought he'd tell me? Come on, man. Sero laughs lightly. I don't think you get it, Kirishima. He's more open with you than he is with just about anyone else. He actually cares about what you think. Kirishima's about to protest that, but he decides he has more pressing concerns at the moment. Who's taking care of him? No one, Sero says. You think he'd let anyone? No, he's probably just holed up in his apartment. I tried to make him a doctor's appointment and he freaked out about it. You know, more than usual. So he's just alone, for the past 3 days. Sero's shrug is practically audible. Hey, you may be good at crashing past his objections, but he can still fire me, you know. Sometimes when he tells me to fuck off, that's what I gotta do. Kirishima presses his lips together. The last couple of times he's been sick, he'd come down with the flu at the same time as Ashido or Kaminari. There had always been a few extra healthy people around to run to the pharmacy, or brew tea, or listen to sniffling complaints. Kirishima can't imagine being alone like that. Hey Sero, where does Bakugou live? A doorman lets Kirishima in, directs him to the elevator, and then up to the top floor of the building. Kirishima tries to compare the building to Hagakure Toru's, or Yaoyozuru's beach house. Both places had reeked of money and luxury, in different ways. Bakugou's building is probably just as expensive, but it's toned down. Everything is dark wood and steel and glass, muted colors in the lobby, and strange abstract art pieces that look like explosions hung in the hallways. Kirishima's arms are laden with grocery bags as he taps his foot and waits for the elevator to pause on the right floor. He should have guessed that Bakugou lives in a penthouse apartment, in a nondescript corner of the city where he can blend in with business people and other rich but not famous types. Given how often the paparazzi seem to be dogging him, Bakugou probably needs a place other people can't find easily. There's a keypad by the front door, and Kirishima shuffles his grocery bags so that he can enter the code that Sero had given him. The alarm system chimes as the door swings open, announcing Kirishima's entry into Bakugou's home. He doesn't know what he's expecting as he walks through the threshold. For all that Bakugou occupies his thoughts, there are some things about the actor that Kirishima just can't contemplate. Him having a normal life is one of them. Bakugou seems to only exist in the public eye, an explosive force that exists, bright and loud, before fading out of existence. But the apartment is startlingly normal. There's a shoe rack by the door, boots and loafers neatly arranged in it, all in Bakugou's style and size. The hallway is impeccably tidy. A well-cared-for houseplant stood to one side, as the space opens up to a main room. An enormous flat-screen TV is mounted on the wall, playing the scrolling credits of a movie. Surrounding it, on either side, are sleek shelves, laden with rows upon rows of movies, television shows, and video games. Kirishima's eyes roam over the sheer volume of titles, trying to take them all in. Facing the TV is an L-shaped leather couch, and curled up in one corner of it is a mass of blankets. Sticking out of the blankets, like a dandelion fluff, is a mess of pale blonde hair. "Bakugou?" Kirishima calls out, setting down his grocery bags and kicking off his shoes. "You okay, man?" There's no answer, so Kirishima mumbles a quiet apology for intruding as he steps into the living room. The mass of blankets doesn't stir, even when Kirishima comes right up next to the couch. As he lowers a hand towards Bakugou's head, he can feel the heat radiating off him. He's making soft snuffling noises as he sleeps. "You're gonna suffocate yourself," Kirishima whispers, reaching out to pull aside the topmost blanket. Bakugou mumbles something in his sleep, curling in on himself as Kirishima tries to tug his blanket away. "Hey," Kirishima says again, shaking him slightly. "Get up for a second. You should be sleeping in a bed at least." Bakugou mumbles again, and this time it sounds distinctly like, "Fuck off." Kirishima grins wryly, then says, "You want me to carry you to bed?" Bakugou's eyes flutter open for a moment, glassy and unfocused. Red color sits high on his cheekbones, and his nose and upper lip are crusted over with postnasal drip. He blinks blearily at Kirishima, not really seeing him. Fine," he says, almost coherently, after a moment. "Okay," Kirishima says, struck for a moment by how small Bakugou sounds and looks, curled up like a kitten in one corner of the massive couch. "Can I sit here with you then?" "No," Bakugou says, pulling his blankets over his head. "Go away." "Nope," Kirishima says affably, taking a seat beside him. Bakugou's apartment is wide and open, full of natural light. He clearly has a lot of stuff, if the shelves full of movies are any indication, but the apartment creates the illusion of space and Spartan sensibility. Bakugou shudders visibly, then very slowly pulls himself upright. Leaning back against the couch with the blanket wrapped around him like a cape, he squints at Kirishima as he tries to focus his eyes. "What," he rasps, "are you doing here?" "I was worried about you," Kirishima says, leaning forward to press a hand against Bakugou's forehead. "You didn't answer my texts for 3 days. I start to think you're skipping out on me or something." He meant it as a joke, but Bakugou's expression crumbles into something caught between anger and sadness. "You're not allowed to say that to me." He spaces his words carefully, but they still manage to slur in the end as Bakugou's head falls back against the couch. He groans, shivering. "Right," Kirishima says softly, "because we're not actually dating. But I can still worry, you know. And look, you were sick and all alone. That's not acceptable at all." Bakugou breathes out through his mouth, pulling his legs up against his chest. "I'm alone all the fucking time," he mumbles, pressing his chin against the top of his knees. Kirishima frowns at that. "Sure," he starts, "but you don't have to be, you know. If you'd called me, I would have been here." Bakugou shakes his head, shoulders hunched. "Go record your album." Kirishima lets out a little gasp. "You did read my messages." Bakugou brings his hands up to rest against his temples, glaring at Kirishima. "Shut up! Stop being loud, or go away." "I'm not going away," Kirishima says. "I brought soup and medicine and everything else I need to take care of you. Don't worry, okay? I'm gonna make you feel better." He ends this with a wide grin. Bakugou looks up at his face for a moment, then winces. "I'm gonna throw up." "Hey," Kirishima starts, but then his eyes go wide. "Oh, you're serious. Do you have a bucket? Bathroom? Where's your bathroom, Bakugou?" They end up staggering down the hallway together, Kirishima trying to support Bakugou as he tries to push Kirishima off him. He ends up retching all over his black-tiled bathtub, but there's not much substance to the clear fluid he brings up. After a few minutes, when Bakugou is leaning his forehead against the wall, Kirishima looks critically at him. "When was the last time you ate?" "Stop talking," Bakugou groans. "No, I'm serious," Kirishima says. "I haven't seen you in 3 days. Have you just been lying on your couch that whole time?" Bakugou doesn't answer, just hunches further in on himself as he shivers against a cold that Kirishima can't feel. Kirishima heaves a sigh and crosses the distance between them, pulling Bakugou against him so that he can hoist him to his feet. "Jeez," he says, when Bakugou slumps against him instead of pulling away. "Why do you have to make everything so difficult for yourself?" "I don't need you," Bakugou says, petulantly. Kirishima rolls his eyes. "Sure, whatever. Just let me help you to bed, alright?" It takes a bit of coordination, but Kirishima first manages to towel off Bakugou's sweaty face and neck, before practically dragging him down the hallway to his bedroom. Again, it's far more well-kept than Kirishima would have imagined, or could have managed himself. Bakugou's bed is made, and there's a desk in one corner, home to a sleek computer and many neat stacks of paper. Kirishima sets Bakugou down on the bed, and then roots through his dresser for some clean pajamas. "Ugh," Bakugou groans, laying down on his back as his feet dangle off the edge of his king-size bed. "I hate you." Sure, Kirishima agrees. He pulls out a pair of sweats and a loose t-shirt, throwing them in Bakugou's general direction. "Can you get yourself dressed while I heat up some soup?" Bakugou fumbles with pulling off the tank he's wearing, utterly disregarding Kirishima's presence. "Alright," Kirishima says, sighing softly. He pads back into the hallway to reclaim his grocery bags, then spends 10 minutes navigating his way through Bakugou's futuristic and intimidating kitchen. Everything is perfectly labeled and seemingly made of stainless steel. His cupboards are full of spices, and there's nothing pre-prepared in his fridge. Not trusting his own culinary skills, Kirishima brought pre-made soup with him. In all fairness, it's more of a broth, clear and mostly flavorless. Kirishima helps himself to a tray and a bowl out of Bakugou's cupboards, lays out some medicine, and makes his way back to the bedroom. Bakugou is lying more or less where Kirishima left him, except now he's wearing flannel pants and the t-shirt Kirishima had picked out for him. He's still shivering, but appears to have lost his energy halfway through getting under the covers. When Kirishima enters, Bakugou blinks up at him with a murderous expression. "How are you in my house?" he demands. Kirishima shrugs him off, shifting some of the papers on Bakugou's desk so that he can set a tray there for a moment. "Don't touch that," Bakugou snaps, which of course makes Kirishima take a second look. It's a script, he realizes, probably hundreds of pages long, all bound together and titled in neat block writing. "Because He Is My Hero," the cover page reads, a film by Yagi Toshinori. A bright post-it note sticks out of the page about a third way through the script, and on it someone has neatly written, "Bakugou, to read for Dragon King." Puzzling over that, Kirishima goes back to the bed to help Bakugou under the covers. He stacks 3 pillows together so that Bakugou can sit upright while still leaning against them, then tucks the covers back around them. Bakugou accepts this treatment with an impotent kind of hostility. He glares, but has no strength to fight back. "Why isn't anyone here with you?" Kirishima asks, sitting on the edge of the bed. Bakugou lets his eyes fall shut, still breathing heavily. "I don't want anyone here." Kirishima purses his lips. "You want me to go?" Bakugou's eyes open just enough for the angry red slits of his irises to be visible. "No. I just fucking hate being sick." "Why's that?" Kirishima gets it. No one really likes being sick. Sure, it's a good way to get out of school or be pampered for a bit, which is nice. But ultimately, that stuff isn't really worth it. But Bakugou's words have been getting at something else. Bakugou clenches his eyes shut. Whether it's the fever or the nausea, something about his current state must be loosening his tongue. Because when he blinks open his eyes, he says, "Because something terrible always happens when I am okay. Just fuck off about it." "It really does suck to be sick," Kirishima says, leaning over to brush the hair back from Bakugou's brow. He shudders against the coolness of Kirishima's skin, but doesn't push him away. "It's not what I meant." Kirishima waits, and after a moment, Bakugou continues. You can't do anything when you're like this," he mutters, turning his face so that he's talking to the wall instead of Kirishima directly. "I'm just stuck and powerless. I can barely fucking see or think, and then when I wake up, the entire world has gone to hell." "I think everything's fine," Kirishima says, trying to be helpful. Bakugou snorts, which turns into a cough. "You don't get it." "You can explain it to me," Kirishima tells him. "I mean, I know you like keeping everything bottled up, but when you talked to me about Midoriya, that helped, right? I mean, it helped me understand you. If you need to tell someone things, to get them off your chest, that person can be me. I don't mind. I want to tell you things, too." Bakugou turns over, blinking blearily up at Kirishima, like he can't keep him centered in his vision. "I was in a movie when I was 4, he says, at length. "Yeah," Kirishima nods. "Sero showed us the trailer. The 7th All Might movie, right?" Bakugou blinks, which must be some sort of confirmation. He coughs again, then scowls at himself before continuing. "It was my first movie. Not even real acting, it's just standing around and saying lines, then looking scared. It took months to film, but halfway through I got really sick." Kirishima can just imagine what a grueling pace of a movie production would be like for a 4-year-old. "Yeah." Bakugou grimaces. "Fucking dehydration or something. I was in the hospital. They had to push production back for 2 months since I looked so shitty, even after I was better. They couldn't just reshoot with another kid. All Might, Yagi wouldn't allow it." Yagi Toshinori, Kirishima thinks. The actor behind All Might, and the director of the movie script currently sitting on Bakugou's desk. "He's so fucking stupid," Bakugou says, hands clenching against his bed covers. His eyes are wet. "What do you mean?" Kirishima asks. He doesn't really know how movies work, but he'd expect anyone to be grateful for the opportunity to work with Yagi. Bakugou clenches his eyes shut again, gritting his teeth. "He's stupid, because he was sick, and he fucking knew it too, but he let them stall the production, and he kept pushing himself through it. He didn't tell anyone he had goddamn leukemia. He should have been in the hospital, and he would have been if we'd finished the movie on time, but we didn't, and he acted his way through a debilitating illness, doing all his own goddamn stunts, and then when it was all over, he couldn't do it. Again, he was coughing up blood, and they had to take him away, and he couldn't be All Might anymore. Stupid fucking idiot." "You think that's your fault?" Kirishima asks quietly. "Bakugou, you were just a little kid. You couldn't have controlled any of that. If Yagi was gonna get sick, it would have happened anyway." Bakugou glowers at him, lowering himself further into his nest of blankets and pillows, as moisture leaks out of the corner of his eyes. "Fuck," he mutters, rubbing at his face. "I fucking hate being sick." Kirishima edges closer. "You should take some medicine and then get some rest. You'll probably feel better after you get some proper sleep." "I don't want to sleep," Bakugou growls. "You'll feel better," Kirishima tells him. "No, I won't," Bakugou snaps. "I'll wake up and you'll be gone and I'll feel like shit." Kirishima blinks, sitting back for a moment. "You don't want to go to sleep because you think I'll leave. Why would I do that? I came to take care of you." Bakugou blinks at him suspiciously. "You have to leave at some point." Kirishima shrugs. "Sure, eventually. But for now, I'm all yours. You don't even have to sleep. Just rest. I'll stay and hang out with you." "Meaning you'll annoy me to death," Bakugou mutters, then covers his face as he starts coughing again. Kirishima rubs his back, wincing in sympathy as Bakugou's chest rattles. "You've got to work on mixed messages, Bakugou. Should I stay or should I go, you know?" "No," Bakugou hisses. Then he groans and lets his head fall back up against the pillows. "Fuck. Just stay." Kirishima smiles softly. "Sure, whatever you want." Bakugou's brow furrows, like he's trying to catch a second meaning in Kirishima's words. "But don't make a big deal about it. I don't need your pity." Kirishima laughs before he can help it. "Dude, I don't pity you. I care about you." And as he says it, Kirishima realizes the truth of the matter. He genuinely does care about Bakugou, more than he ever thought possible. It isn't just attraction or being starstruck. Everything Bakugou shares with him, every emotion he reveals, it all makes Kirishima want to take care of him more. "I really do," he continues, before Bakugou can interrupt him. "I think you're completely awesome. I know you can take care of yourself. You probably would have just popped up again a few days and never even told me you were sick, right? But right now, you're here, and you're alone and feeling shitty. I don't want to leave you like that. I never would." Bakugou is rubbing at his eyes again. "It's embarrassing." Kirishima nods. "Sure, but who am I going to tell?" "You won't leave," Bakugou says, not inflecting his words with a question, but asking all the same. "I won't," Kirishima promises.